We are waiting just 2 minutes and testing the microphone in the meantime. Because our third speaker is on his way. He's coming within 2 minutes. So good morning, everyone. Once again, on this second day of our annual E2I OSH conference dedicated to OSH, occupational safety and health, and climate change and green transition. We had a very interesting afternoon yesterday, I think, and we will continue today with let's say yesterday we had a picture of the problem, a broad picture of the problem, OSH and climate change and OSH and green transition. What are the problems? What are the issues to tackle? What are the things that we haven't thought about? And today we will speak, we will go into the direction of solutions, but also more concrete pictures of sectors. And I'm really, really happy to have three fantastic colleagues here beside me at the table from three European trade union confederations. I think it's one of the best panels one can have in a topic like this, because as I also said yesterday, it's not only about mapping and analyzing the problem, but it's a very urgent problem and we need action. And these people here are from the action, I hope. I'm sure. So on my right side, Sophie Grenade, she's a senior policy advisor for Industrial European Trade Union, so the industry union. And her main areas of focus are raw materials and circular economy, a topic that we also discussed yesterday. She's also in charge of European social sectoral dialogue committees in gas, electricity, extractive industry, and pulp and paper sector. She has more than 10 years of trade union work at national, European, and international level. She has a master's degree in political sociology from University in Paris, and a master's degree in sociology in Belgium, the University of Liège. And she also worked 6 years at the Faculty of Social Sciences in the University of Liège. So then on my left side, we have Enrico Somaglia, and he is the EFAT Deputy General Secretary, and EFAT is the European Federation of Food, Agriculture and Tourism Trade Unions. Most of you, of course, are very familiar with these European federations. And he also represents domestic workers. So as a European Trade Union Federation with 2.6 million members, representing 120 national trade unions from 35 European countries, EFAT defends the interest of more than 25 million workers throughout the food chain. Enrico is a qualified lawyer, and he also mentioned that he himself has worked in the hospitality sector for quite some time. He has been a waiter for 3 nights a week for quite a few years. So yeah, and then on the far right, I'm sorry.
Depends what you see.
It's our colleague Adam Rogolewski. He is policy officer responsible for health and social services in the European Federation of Public Service Unions, better known as EPSU, and he has worked for the British Public Services Union. He has worked for the Swiss General Union and the Polish Federation of Trade Unions, OPZZ, as a director of the International Department. And he was a member of the European Economic and Social Committee. He has a PhD from London Metropolitan. I don't know which direction, which topic.
It's industrial relations in relations to migrant workers.
Excellent. So now we know everything. And then we are going to start with this panel. I prepared a few questions. We are going to do it like this. We are going to, I'm going to do some questions with the panelists. And then we also want to save time for you to ask questions. So I hope you are all awake and active, because I look forward to the discussion. So, OSH and climate change. I would like to start with, let's say, a question that we also raised yesterday, but then targeted at the sector of yourself. So, can you give a description of the OSH issues at stake in your sectors, with regard to, on the one hand, climate change, and on the other hand, green transition? And maybe in some sectors it's more climate change, maybe in other sectors it's more green transition. But Sophie, may I start with you?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Maybe first I will say a few words about my organization, so Industrial Europe Trade Union, so you know better what we are doing exactly. So we represent around 7 million workers in the metal, chemical, mining, energy, textile sector. Yeah, as you can imagine, this sector is really central when we talk about climate change, green transition, green and digital transition. They are also, yeah, I would say at the center when it comes to new risk, because as I said, we are really dealing with this green transition. We try to have this green transition, a just transition, included good working condition. And yeah, it's really touching each of our sector. We have to reduce our CO2 emissions. This means that we will have to change the way we have access to energy, the way we are producing energy, the way we are producing the different products that are on the market, etc. So there are enormous and massive changes in the different sectors that are also, of course, and yeah, maybe at the first instance, touching the workers. But yeah, in order to reply to the question, maybe this first part will be a bit more descriptive. Yeah, we have thought about this question since a long time now, because when it comes to the risk linked to the climate change, you can imagine that the extreme weather events are also touching this kind of sector. When it comes to storm, floods, this impact, of course, the manufacturers and also very much the energy infrastructure. When we are talking about gas, nuclear power plant, etc., these kind of extreme weather events are very at risk, I would say, even for the worker. Especially when it comes to maintenance. And you may heard about this electrician in France that died because he tried to repair a cable during the floods that happened several weeks ago in France. So yeah, I would say that the extreme weather events are very much touching the workers in the industrial sector, energy sector, because yeah, of the change that's happening on the ground. Also in the mining industry, floods, etc., in the carrying the very hot temperature, etc., are touching very much the workers. So extreme weather events linked to climate change, but also the heat. I think you already covered that quite hugely yesterday. We have also many workers reporting problems linked to that. Maybe first of all, the workers who have to wear personal protective equipment. When it comes to deal with more warm temperature, it's more difficult to keep this protective equipment because you are already very hot, and then you have to deal with warmer temperature. Also, some of our sector, when it comes to cement, glass sectors, are also in touch with very hot temperature because of the procedure and the processing of these kind of materials. If of course the increasing heat of the temperature are touching that quite hugely, and there are some report of problems linked to that. Maybe the last thing I would say regarding the risk of the climate change is about mental health. I think you also touched this a bit yesterday, but of course, all the stress about the future of the sector is also, of course, impacting the workers. And when it comes to the coal phase out, for example, you know that in several years we will not mine any more coal because of the climate change. And this is, of course, a good thing, but this is also impacting a lot the workers because they do not know what will happen with their work. They need. This is also why we are talking about this super important just transition in order to reskill these workers, etc., to also try to avoid this mental stress. When it comes to the risk of the green transition, yeah, I can talk hours on that because we have lots of new technologies linked to as I said to the green transition, new technologies, even new sectors, and new substances also that the workers have to deal with. So yeah, I can just name a few examples. Maybe the first one is the battery sector. As you can imagine, with the electrification, we will need more and more battery. There are some projects and already some plants in some countries delivering battery. And for each type of battery, of course, there will be specific health and safety problem. But it's clear that it's a major sector that is really linked to occupational safety and health problems, explosion. This is also very corrosive. There is also new exposure of substance, etc., dust. So this is something we are working on, but maybe I can say more in the second turn of question. Another thing I wanted to mention, because it's also linked to one of the sector I'm following, it's the mining industry. You know that because of the green transition, we're gonna have more needs when it comes to critical raw materials. I don't know if you are a bit aware of this kind of raw materials, but when you want to have a wind turbine, photovoltaic panels, or battery, you need cobalt, lithium, etc., and far more critical raw materials that are not much. For the moment, not very much sourced in Europe, but there is a new plan in Europe, the Critical Raw Materials Act, that was just endorsed several weeks ago, that would like to develop new mines in Europe, but new mines also for new substance, new materials that will, of course, have some links with the health and safety of the workers, because it's new substances, new materials that we do not know exactly well. So it's very much important that we also tackle this sector. For example, cobalt can cause lung cancer, but also respiratory effects and reproductive toxicity. Then I have also lots of other examples when it comes to circular economy. This is also, for some part a new sector that is dealing with new way of dealing with materials, so also new risk. When you disassemble a battery, for example, there is a contact with some substance, etc. You are also you can also have respiratory problems with that. So there is currently, I would say, a lack of knowledge linked to that, because there is also a race to have access to these raw materials, and this is going very fast, and we are a bit afraid that this race lead also to new problems. Yeah, and I have maybe the last thing I can present in order to also let the others speak, which can be also interesting, because we also forget that. But when it comes to the supply of energy, of electricity, it's, you know, that it's more and more difficult because of the energy crisis, but also the energy supply crisis. It will probably also still happen when you want to have access to renewables energy. So this could lead some manufacturers to increase the night shifts, because they will have more access to this energy, because they are not used during the day. So they have more access and supply to this energy. So this, you know that, I think that more than everyone, that the night shift and night work can create lots of problems when it comes to the health and safety of workers. So that's something we will have to take care of too.
Thank you very much, Sophie. And in those 5 or 7 minutes, you have made clear the many issues that come across with both with climate change, but even more so with the green transition. Very clear examples. So thank you very much. We go with the same question. I would like to go to Enrico. So can you give a description of the OSH issues at stake related to climate change and green transition?
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for inviting EFAT and giving really us the opportunity to outline the challenges that we see with respect to climate change and the green transition. I mean, we deal with sector as EFAT, agriculture, food processing, the hospitality industry that are depending on meteorological conditions. So they are really affected by climate change. And at the same time, they highly contribute to climate change, because if we take, for example, just the agro-food value chain, well, it accounts for about 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions. If you take tourism, not tourism per se as hospitality industry, but if you take on board also the transport related to tourism, then we are around the 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. So that means that we deal with sectors that greatly contribute to climate change, but we deal with sectors that are especially highly affected by climate change. And climate change for us means two main issues. The first one is related to job insecurity. If you think about desertification in the agriculture sector, if you think about the lack of snow in the hospitality industry, mountain regions, and I see here in the room my dear colleague Christian Jouillot, who is our coordinator in Club Med, and he knows very well the issue. If you think about extreme weather events in general, what they mean for the agriculture sector, but also for the hospitality industry. So job insecurity is the first challenge. And it is very much related to climate change. And this is also connected to what Sophie was saying. It is very much related also to mental health, stress, because if you fear for your job, if you are not able to carry out your work activity on a regular basis, because one season you can work, this season after there is no snow, then it means that you have to convert also your skills. You need to think about another occupation, think about getting the skills needed to find another job. Or in any case, you fear very much about your future. Then it depends very much on what is your age, how much, what is your adaptability. So these are all the issues connected. But then there are the issues which are mainly related very much to the meteorological condition and therefore health and safety. And if you think about, for example, increased temperature, that means major issues. It means head stress for agricultural workers. It means and hospitality workers. It means exhaustions. It means dehydration. It means sunburn. It can also mean death in the most extreme situation. We had almost every summer now cases of agricultural workers that die because of high temperature. And this is something that as trade union movement we really have to oppose, and we really don't have to accept. We have major issues with me when it comes to women workers, in particular pregnant women agricultural workers that work in high temperatures. This has major consequences in terms of premature birth, and we have issues related to radiations, to skin cancer. So it's really when it comes to OSH and climate change, the issues when it comes to our sectors that, as said, depend very much on meteorological conditions that we cover, in particular outdoor workers. Then the issues are really there and are really affecting the workers that we represent. And that unfortunately, I must say that when it comes to the European Commission, at the moment, we saw some actions that have been taken with these heat stress guidelines, heat at work guidelines, sorry, that have been launched last spring, but we are still far away from having what EFAT is really calling for, which is a new binding initiative on maximum working temperature and extreme weather events that set the clear rules for limiting work during heat waves, that set clear rules in terms of maximum working temperature, that set clear rules in terms of longer breaks, provision of water, but also set clear rules in terms of compensation of days lost because of extreme weather events. If we see almost every month we have extreme weather events in Europe, and the agriculture sector is always the most affected one. And the second one is probably the hospitality industry. And those workers, we always hear a lot about compensation for employers, for companies, for farms that have lost their productivity. And this is, of course, something we support. But nobody thinks about those seasonal workers, those agricultural workers, those hospitality workers that cannot go to work for a given period because the harvesting is not happening anymore, because their hospitality facilities are not accessible anymore. So this is a major issue. So we really want to see a response from the European Union in this respect, and there is some hope now in view of the EU election that political parties will take on board this demand, and we are really being extremely active with the most progressive ones to ensure that we don't then forget during winter what is happening during summer. This is a bit what we tend to do also as trade unions. I think we are very vocal during summer on extreme heat, etc., and then we tend to forget during winter. We need to keep pushing and to ensure that there is something clear, because this is about adaptability, adaptation strategies, and are needed as well because climate change is already there. To talk about mitigation, and I will be brief, sorry for being too long. When it comes to mitigation strategies, so to the green transition, as said, we talk about sectors that greatly contribute to climate change. And if you look at the European Union, the Green Deal had a part which is called the Farm to Fork strategy, which really deals with the agro-food sector. And we have always supported the Farm to Fork strategy as EFAT, because we have always said we need to change the way we do agriculture, the way we produce food, because of what I said before, greatly contribute to climate change in terms of emissions. But we always said we need to see some social consideration in it. And this is where I think we can have some coordination, and we already have a lot of coordination and cooperation with the other ETUCs. The main issue we see with this Farm to Fork strategy is that, with respect probably to some of the initiatives that have been launched in the other sector, I think the automotive sector, the industrial sector, etc., unfortunately the political debate has been so harsh, in particular after the war in Ukraine, because the far-right narrative has been the dominant one, and the far-right rhetoric and has become also the rhetoric of the conservative group of the EPP. And they started saying that there was a major issue of food security in Europe, and food security was not possible because of the Farm to Fork strategy, because of the Green Deal, because of all these very high environmental ambition of the European Union. And that has led to the fact that important initiatives like the Sustainable Food System Initiative or the Sustainable Use of Pesticide initiatives have been basically put on hold, have been cancelled. The Sustainable Food System Initiative, which was very important, has not been even issued by the European Commission. And the Sustainable Use of Pesticide, which was the initiative that was aiming at cutting pesticide by 50% before 2030, has been voted against by the European Parliament a couple of weeks ago. And as said, we were very critical, but still supportive. So for us, it's a bad news as trade union movement, because we needed those initiatives, because less pesticide means also better health and safety for agricultural workers, because we managed to include in that legislation important achievements in terms of recognition and compensation of occupational diseases linked to pesticide use, and because the initiative on sustainable food system could have been very important to to make the food sector more sustainable. And unfortunately, this narrative, which is a wrong narrative, was missing a point. We never had problem of food security in Europe. What we had was problems of food affordability. And food affordability is an issue because food is becoming too expensive, but it's becoming too expensive for two main reasons. The first one is that there is a lot of food speculation. We talk a lot about speculation in the energy market. Well, we have the same level of speculation in food commodities markets, and there are a few actors that are gaining a lot of money because there are winners and losers in the food sector as usual. And the second one is the fact that we have indeed this process of concentration that is occurring across all the food value chain, from agrochemical to fertilizer, in the retail industry, with retailers, big supermarket chains that have huge power of negotiation, and of course, small farmers and agricultural workers are the losers. So, in a nutshell, yes, we had also some concern with respect to the green transition, but the reality we see at the moment is that there is no green ambition anymore in the agro-food sector. Everything has been put on hold, and this is a pity. What we needed was the green transition, but with social consideration, and I will maybe explain later on what we mean by that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Enrico. And once again, a very concrete and enlightening picture. I think it's so useful to go to go into detail and to leave the abstract stories and to go into the concrete reality of workers. And we see that everything relates to everything. Well, it's really, I think what I always feel is that occupational health and safety of workers is often forgotten. It's often seen as collateral damage. And so that is why I think this conference is really important, but especially this panel is also very important because it shows the reality, I think. So thank you very much. And now we go to Adam. Same question for you. In your sector, what are the issues, the OSH issues at stake relating to climate change and green transition?
So again, thank you very much for inviting me, and I feel here back as like being in the E2UC previous building, no, because there was also this cinema room, so you feel like being there again. So maybe some information about our federation. So we represent public services. So basically health and social services, national and local government, but also utilities, that is gas, electricity, water and waste sector. And we work very closely with industrial Europe in terms of gas and electricity. When we talk about the public services, it's really good that we change the order of this presentation, because what actually means for public services, so what we do in public services, we are dealing with the result of climate change. Why? Because if you look at health, for instance, we know there is like a heat waves, and then there is a lot of people who are down dealing with heat waves, then they are going to the hospitals. And then during the summertime, the workers need to deal with them and provide some support. It's not only heat. We have now a season of flu or season of cold weather. So we see that the hospitals have become crowded more and more because particularly older people cannot deal with this situation, so they are going to hospitals, and they are there. And in NHS, if someone is here from the UK, they probably will have the problem with NHS again, with the backlog of the patients. So that actually shows that the climate change is affecting a lot public services. Adding to that, it's not only the hospital sector, but also firefighters. So that's, I think, the best examples of having a fire or forest fire everywhere. And then, the firefighters are working around the clock during the summer holidays. And fire is not only about danger for the firefighters as such, but also it's what's pollution is there. The chemicals in those issues, they are actually affecting everyone in terms of the population, in terms of the clean air. So that's another issue. In terms of someone's working outside, we also have paramedics who are actually going outside and dealing with these issues. And then Enrico was saying about pesticides. We have the situation with, for instance, gardener in the local governments know who need to do it. I will not talk about the waste and electricity and gas because already you mentioned this, the issues there. What is at stake for us, and that's a really problem because we basically do our work indoor. And there was a colleague saying yesterday about the maximum temperature indoors, which is not only temperature but humidity. So what it means that the workers need to wear protective equipment, and when it's protective equipment, it's given more warmer. But the question for us and the issues for us that those buildings were mainly built in the 70s or 60s. So it's not only asbestos, you could actually predict an issue is that there is no air conditioning in those buildings in the hospitals. There was, I think this summer was issues in the hospital in Marseille when there was really no air conditioning. So they cannot have patients, they cannot provide healthy working conditions for the workers. I recently met with the nurses union from Norway, and in Nordic countries they don't have air conditioning in their hospitals because basically there was no summer. I mean, there was not such summer as in Southern Europe, right? But it's changing now, no? And what can you do? You cannot open the window because it's warmer than inside. So I mean that will involve a lot of investments from the government. And this is the paradox for us because we are dealing with the staff shortages, everyone the staff shortages, but in particular in the healthcare sector after the COVID pandemic, we have 2 million staff shortages in health and social services. But the climate change means more work. That's one issue. So it's like workload. So it's opposite to what Enrico was saying, that people are saying there won't be work, there will be more work, but who will be doing this work? And the situation in the winter time, but also this, sort of floods, some not predictable working condition. That means more work for our staff. And you have the staff shortage just at the same time. So I think that's a big problem here. So less work for you, more work for us. Yeah. And I think that's the issue that we want to really deal with. And I think this is already in the early stage for us, of course, in public services. But I think the issue is about the buildings. No, I mean they're completely not prepared for what is happening. And the governments are not prepared for that. Firefighters, paramedics, I mentioned this, and that's an issue. There is a directive now being decided. It's about the clean air, which was very important. The doctors were involved in this directive, which means that everything is really connected to climate change. So that is an issue for us, what I wanted to say. And in terms of the green transition, maybe I should really talk about that. We are starting working on that as well, how to ensure that our hospitals, our buildings produce less CO2, which are again the very old buildings. And that's also related to the training of the staff and to ensuring that we try to recycle some elements of our work. But again, here it's another issue in terms of the hospitals now, because how we could reduce CO2 or anything emissions when the hospitals are polluting a lot, because it's not only chemical hazards, it's biological hazards. And you cannot tell the workers who are dealing with staff shortages, okay, you can need to maybe do it this and that. Whereas the issue is here, for instance, in terms of the sharp injuries, there's no proper protections for them to distribute to dealers. So that's very much interconnected in terms of us, and that will be really having this in the future, more and more issues in relations to climate change, which put the pressure on the workforce who are working in the buildings which are not prepared, and then who are probably need to wear special equipments which make them even more warm. And another issue is here, it's of course that public services play another role, which of public procurement, because this is the government money. So we really need to ensure that whatever we'll be doing will have some sort of a green positive green effects on the companies. And so that's one of the issues, the closer of reducing CO2 and public procurements, but also in terms of ensuring that the issue of subcontracting, because that's the biggest issues. We already talked about this yesterday, in particular in waste collectors, that the workers are being provided with the security working conditions. And maybe just to summarize what I wanted to say here, in some of them countries, we already try to develop this so-called green trade union representatives who are actually there to talk to the management in terms how to ensure to reduce emissions, but also to ensure not adding additional workload, as we heard yesterday from the presentation in the hospital sector. No, so that's ensure that, because if you ask the trade unions, they always are in favor of that. Just we need to reduce CO2. But we need to do in a way in which that it's not actually adding more stress to the workers and giving more workload, which is already here. So I think that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. And again, a very concrete and practice-oriented picture. And good that you asked to be the last, because indeed, as you said, your sector deals with the results of climate change, and there's also connections with the other sectors. And when we hear pictures like this, I mean, it's always the case, if we are going to map or to analyze or to dive into the problems with occupational health and safety, it's never a very optimistic story. But unfortunately, related to this issue, OSH and climate change and green transition, we are still in this phase. I think the stories that we hear now, I mean, the colleagues, they have been working on it already for years, but for many of us to hear it in this detail is probably new, and let alone outside of this room, how new these stories may be, how unaware policy community, the society is of these issues. It is a bit the fate of occupational health and safety. It's a forgotten thing. We are going to make society green, but who, as I said yesterday, is going to do the dirty work to make society green? So we have made a picture of that now. We have a clear picture of who is doing that and how. But we are going to some more optimistic part, I hope. And I propose that we take question 2 and 3 together, because otherwise we'll run out of time. So we do one more round of 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes each, and then we give the audience the opportunity. So what I want to ask now is, what needs to be done in your sector to prevent or mitigate negative OSH consequences from climate change and or green transition? And second question, how to get there? What are foreseeable actions to be taken by your unions? Sophie.
Thank you. And just before replying to the question, I would just like to support what you just said. We think that we absolutely need this transition, this green transition, but we do not want any kind of transition, of green transition. And all the work we are doing together with the other ETUF on just transition is really the main important aspect of all of this. And just transition, it's becoming more and more a buzzword, so it's also important to define it and having very clear message when it comes to these demands. And I mean, it's all about the social pillar of the green transition linked to working condition, but also anticipating the change, working on the job-to-job transition, the skills, the reskill and upskill of the workers, etc. But maybe to be more concrete, what needs to be done? Maybe I will point on 4 things that I was thinking about. The first thing is, and I also mentioned it in the first round, is the lack of knowledge. For us, it's clear that we miss data, we miss research, we miss expertise on the new risks. It's clear that something is happening. Some people are doing that, but this is not enough, because, as I said also earlier, there is a race to the new technologies. It's going very fast, and we are missing the health and safety dimension when it comes to workers, but even for the the public, I mean the society, because when you are building a new battery site and that you are polluting water, etc., it's not just it's first of all the worker, but also the community living around, etc. So a lack of knowledge, we need more risk assessment to these new technologies, new substance, etc., more research, and I think that more coordination inside Europe is also very much important. The second thing that needs to be done, according to us, is also the very important link to the limits, exposure limits for substances, because probably we will have to reevaluate all these limits, because some substances are reacting differently when they are confronted to a more hot temperature or even cold temperature. So what will happen with this kind of, we have very clear limits, but if it's warmer in the room, maybe this kind of dust will provoke more severe effects, etc. So that's also something that we also need to assess new limits or risk assessment for these substances when it comes to this climate modification. This also means that we will need new tools to measure this exposure, the heat in the building, outdoor, etc. This is absolutely key that we are also working on that, and also train the people who will use the new tools that will help to develop this risk assessment. Another very much important thing, I'm sure Adam and probably everyone will agree, but we need more elaborate inspection and also inspectors that are trained to new risk. For the moment, we also see like a two-speed evolution of this kind of stuff, because it takes time to train people, it takes time to make research, then it takes time to train people to the new risk, etc. And this is very much important that this is done quickly, because this is important that we do it now because of all the risk that was mentioned earlier. And then I think it's also very much important that we have also to link all this labor inspection stuff to the austerity measure. You know that now the Europe wants to have this austerity back on the agenda, and for us this is exactly the opposite of the thing that have to be done. If you need I mean it's of course for the labor inspection, but for any kind of green and just transition. And then maybe a last thing on what to be done is also to train workers to new risk and new occupational and problems, etc. It's very much important that we put all the focus on reskilling and upskilling. How to get there? I would like maybe to mention that I think that the trade union have absolutely a key role in this aspect. It's very much important that we are sure that we organize the new workplace, that we inform, also report new problems, health and safety problems, that we negotiate agreement that will improve the working condition. So trade unions are very much important at the local level, at the national level, and at the European level. It's also important that we continue to have society dialogue, good society dialogue at this different level. I can mention maybe an agreement we have with the employers regarding respirable silica. So it's an EPSI agreement that we have signed several years ago with employers of different sectors for the workers who are who are in front of this kind of dust, and that provoke you know that can lead to several health and safety problems. And we have decided to have this agreement in order to implement the legislation, because we have exposure limit, but that's not enough. When you have exposure limit, you have to be sure that it's implemented in the workplace. And the employers there are also very keen to work with us, because they need to know exactly what can be done, exchange good practices, involve workers in these strategies, etc. So that's also something that is important. Maybe I would like to also link that to the need to work more on this health and safety issue in new sector is also in line with the problem of attractiveness of some sector, of new sector. An example is the battery plants in Hungary. For the moment, no Hungarian colleagues want to go there because there was, and I see some colleagues in the room. Maybe you can also explain more better than me, but it's a major problem, not because exactly of the wage or salary, etc., but because they know that there will be health and safety problem if they go to work there. So for the moment, lots of migrant workers are coming to Hungary to work in these plants, and this is probably an important thing to tackle. We want good green jobs. We want good industrial jobs. We do not want any kind of green jobs. That's something we wanted to highlight. I hope I was not too long.
Or not. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Sophie. And without any break, I go to Enrico for his take on measures, solutions, and how to get there.
Yes, so when it comes to climate change, I think the first action that we really need is what I was mentioning before, is this EU law or national laws then for following implementation of maximum working temperature and extreme weather events. We cannot continue without this initiative anymore. What we see are just local initiatives, decision taken by local authorities, most of the time following the fatality of an agricultural worker, and this decision comes always too late. I think we need, in particular when it comes to OSH, we need to ensure the agriculture sector, we need to ensure the full implementation of social conditionality in the common agriculture policy. This is an important achievement that we have obtained in the last reform of the common agriculture policy, which basically makes link the imposition of sanctions in terms of reduction of payments to farmers. As you know, CAP is a big pot of money that go directly to farmers in Europe. And now, if they don't respect a number of directives, a set of EU rules, and in these EU rules, there are a lot of directive on health and safety, in particular the General Framework Directive on Health and Safety, then they see their CAP payments cut up to the total amount. So this is an important tool because it goes directly to the money that employers in the agricultural sector receive and can be very important in order to leverage labor standards. We need to relaunch, I hope, the initiatives on pesticides, because pesticides is a major threat on health and safety. And it is also linked to climate change because with more higher temperature, etc., also the use of pesticides has changed over the years. We need also to fight antimicrobial resistance, in particular in the meat sector, in the aquaculture sector, which is a major issue linked to the sectors we are dealing with. Is not really linked to climate change, but is linked to societal change. As you know, all the pandemic, including COVID, they come in particular from our sector, from the way we produce food and the way we consume food. So this is also a major issue. And then I think when it comes to the green transition, as I said, the OSH issues that I see more related to that, to the green transition for our sectors are in particular the stress linked to job insecurity that can be a consequence of the implementation of the green transition, the fact that everybody says that we need to eat less meat, that we need to produce in a more sustainable way. And of course, this creates some fears which can only be accepted through social acceptance. Because at the end, in our sectors, we always say that the green transition is not a threat, is actually an opportunity to create better jobs, in particular in sectors like ours that are extremely precarious. So the situation is very difficult, that becomes even worse, can only become better, but we need to ensure that this transition is an opportunity. And to ensure that is an opportunity, we need to get social acceptance. And to do that, we need to do a number of things, which I don't have the time to mention, but just to mention some of them, we need to have rigorous socioeconomic impact assessment. That means coming back to pesticide, but as said, can bring even more jobs, because if there are less pesticide use, maybe the work requires more, not necessarily manual work, but more work to reach the same result. But then you need to explain, what does it mean? What does it mean cutting pesticides by 50% in Wallonia or in Flanders? And then this is the way to explain that maybe you create better jobs, and people, including farmers, would accept it better. And this is what has not been done. And that's why all these initiatives have been destroyed. We need to ensure that trade unions are in the governance of the transition, and we are not at the moment. And we need to ensure that every single euro spent is linked to social conditionalities. I've mentioned CAP, which is a big amount of money. Any kind of public spending public money has to be linked to social conditionality. No money to employers not respecting workers' rights, and only money to those employers that invest in skills, invest in quality jobs, so respect collective bargaining, which is at the end, as usual, the strongest tool we have. And last but not least, we need to tackle precarious work, and everything starts from there. And in our sector, we have major issues related to subcontracting, abusive subcontracting practices. We have major issues related to labor intermediaries, and we have major issues related to the lack of inspection, as Sophie was saying. That's why we have presented also a proposal on the 31st of May that tackled these three issues. And when it comes to inspections, we have some ILO parameters, which says one labor inspector is every 10,000 workers. This is a criteria that should become binding in the European Union. Yeah. So these are, in a nutshell, what we believe we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Enrico. And I give the floor now to Adam for the last words in this round, and then we go to the audience. Yes, Adam, please.
Yes, so just my role is the easiest one, because first of all, I want to echo what my colleague said here again. In terms of the data information, but I wanted I forgot to ask something from my previous contributions. It's also about not only heat and cold, but also about the new diseases that the heat will be bringing to Europe. Now we have the mosquitoes, you have the dengue coming to Southern Europe. So that will be the issues for us and for hospitals, but also for workers. No. So therefore, we need to really train our colleagues, our members, in terms of how to dealing with the new diseases. What Enrico was saying about the new pandemic, antimicrobial resistance, that's true. That's very important issue, because I sometimes participate in WHO conferences because of my position, and colleagues, the new pandemic will be actually antimicrobial resistance, right? There were already some scenarios discussed between the member states how to deal with that, and it probably will start, and I was playing these scenarios, that will be the meat processing industry somewhere in probably Eastern Europe, which process chicken, and this chicken being distributed to schools, and then it's issues, the problems, and the kids are not responding to antibiotics, because the antibiotics we don't have antibiotics invented for like last 20 years. And again, why? Because the pharma industry is not interested in inventing antibiotics, because once you invent antibiotics, you cannot use it, because then when you use it, the people become resistant to that. So you don't make any profit from antibiotics. So that's the issue of the way you don't have any antibiotics now. And the issues about this pharma legislation, which was basically to pay more money for pharma industry to get even more money. So I think that's an issue in terms of the medication, but it's not the subject of this panel. There was also another issues which we will be dealing more and more, and that's climate refugees. We already see a lot of people are going to Northern Europe, and for that, the first workers who are at the front line are, of course, public service workers, the border control, but those also who need to look after refugees in the places and to work on integration of them. I would like to also echo the labor inspectors. That's very important. So we need to ensure that there is more labor inspectors, and we have not enough of them because of the cuts or lack of investments on very low salary. We also need to avoid any austerity measures, but I think that's quite positive. The WHO is calling to health sector will be excluded from the austerity measure, but it shouldn't be only health sector. No, it should be also and other sectors. We have some initiatives, in particular in the central governments on the green transitions, how we could ensure that the trade unions are involved in the decision makers, because here, and here is very important, as the trade unions, we could we could have more influence on the governments in terms of the procurement or in terms of any other initiatives, what will be then done in terms of the climate change. And I think it's important to underline the OSH strategy. I don't know, the current OSH strategy, does it have anything about the climate change or from 2021 to 2027? I'm not really sure. I think someone was, I don't think it's so much because I was...
Some lip services, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, and the question is, and we need to start with this OSH strategy till 2027, no? I mean, what they are doing now is a big project with the EU OSHA on digitalizations. The previous one was about the musculoskeletal disorders, but there's nothing about climate change. And I think that's here very important. So to summarize, we have public procurement here because it's really important to ensure that the private companies will not get money if there is nothing regarding the reduce in terms of the just transitions, not green transition, but just transition when we were involved. We need to have what I mentioned already, they need to be investing in the buildings. We have this good directive on asbestos, no removal, which is cool because it's also saying about indirect exposure, but I think we need to also use the money to ensure that those buildings, you know, are good in terms of the working conditions. So it's not only about ensuring that they not use a lot of CO2, but actually when they're doing this, there is a good air conditioning and places for that. And I think basically, yes, sector social dialogue is crucial here. And I think here we already discussed it with Sophie and Enrico. The Commission is cutting the cost in the European social dialogues. And I think this is actually outrageous because they're using the green argumentations to cut the costs, and it's absolutely greenwashing because we need to really avoid this. So what they are saying, in particular in the healthcare sector, we have 11 million workers now after the pandemic, everyone was clapping to them, let's do this. And then they're saying from the next year, half of those people will be reimbursed. And when I ask them what is this argumentation, because of the CO2 emission, whatever. So if you come by train, then it's not included. But if someone is from Sweden or from Finland, how they could go by ship for one day meeting? So anyway, that's greenwashing is absolutely outrageous, and I think we need to be there, and therefore we are here also in person to discuss. Now we cannot really remove some topics by using the greenwashing. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I will take the questions in a minute. I mean, I'm impressed by all the ideas, and they're not just fluffy ideas. They are well based on insights, on experiences, etc., etc. So first of all, I see a network emerging. I will come back to that later on this very serious topic. And I hear many elements. I hear knowledge needs to be knowledge, data. I hear regulation, specific regulation on heat and extreme weather. I also hear connection to other regulation like dangerous substances, biological agents. I mean, heat has an influence on climate, has an influence on that. I hear labor inspectors, I hear trained workers, and I heard a few other things that you have also heard, but these are the things that come to my mind at first. So thank you very much. And now we are almost on schedule. So we have quite some time, almost half an hour for questions. I have Karoli, I have Chris, the gentleman in the right and the gentleman in the back. So 4 questions to begin with. Karoli. I've seen you. Yeah, I've seen you. Yeah. But Chris is also, yeah.
Thank you. Is it okay? Is it? Fine. Can you hear me? Also, okay. The first point on Sophie, because she spoke about the Hungarian battery production. I would say in German Wahnsinn. It's a craziness of the government to make Hungary #1 or #2 globally in battery production. I would say this is on the one hand a political issue, on the second hand it's an issue of national economies, but first of all it's an issue of the society and the workers. What we have experienced, and I think this is the negative case scenario, which should be studied for other countries as well, but to avoid. Decisions are made without involvement of the concerned, the localities. And there are a lot of concerns which range from the loss of prime agricultural land, and that's also for EFAT kind of sandbox. Then strain on water and energy resources, which go again hand in hand with the challenges of green transition and just transition. And the question, the disposal of old batteries. And then we come to the workplace. We come to the workplace where impact assessments are missing, where there are already European directives and regulations, which are not at all taken into consideration. So I would first underline the need and the importance of enforcement. But then we also need to link it to public procurement. And that must be done at the European level. There must be a regulation on how to make use of any kind of public money, be it national or be it through, well, that's also national, through the European channels. And there should be a very strict policy linked to the green transition and what we say at the European trade unions, just transition. So these are to be linked up. And this is the role of the European Commission, which has to step up its role. Second, occupational exposure limits. We already have certain occupational exposure limits, but through the climate change, yes, it is true, we need to reassess them. But then we will have to do it in a holistic way. That the links and the interactions of the different substances must be really scrutinized. How they affect each other, where they will strengthen or weaken the effects. And this needs to be done in a very serious way. Very often we hear that everything must be fact-based. And that is, yes, your role as researchers and ETUI especially is outstanding. This is extremely important. And here the cooperation between the European federations and global federations, ETUC and ETUI, must be strengthened. No need, I think, to argue what for. Training. You spoke about the need for training for inspectors. Maybe I'm the eternal naive optimist, but I will never be. I still believe that certain basic trainings should be done together between workers, employers, and inspectors. Because we need to play from the same text or notes. The basics should be done somehow in a conceptual way, in a coherent way. And we also need to step up the training of OSH training for trade union representatives and safety reps. And I underline trade union representatives, because as long as trade unions don't consider OSH as a priority issue, we are lost. So we need to do that. And the European federations can have also a very significant role. And finally, heat, climate change. We just last week adopted the mandate for a working party of the Advisory Committee on Health and Safety at Work to set up the climate change working party, which will hopefully deal with these issues. And it will definitely, I know, from the trade union side, we will push, that's no question. And the last point, you are from Poland, Adam. My basic experience about how trade unions can be seen also positively by employers in terms of OSH issues is the Polish case, where you have the social safety representatives system. And the social safety representatives are seen by approximately 70% of the Polish employers as a positive factor, giving advices in terms of prevention, and not as negative and blocking factors as many other cases. That's it. Thanks.
I propose that we take a few questions because otherwise I see that we get in trouble with time. The gentleman has a microphone and after that is Chris, and then I had one in the back. Yeah. So can you say your name, please?
Bonjour. Bonjour à tous, Christian Juillot. Comme l'a dit Enrico, dans le tourisme, le principal risque du changement climatique, c'est l'emploi. Dans les zones alpines, le changement climatique il va 2 fois plus vite, au-dessus de 1000 mètres. Ce qui fait qu'on connaît aujourd'hui les effets que vous connaîtrez demain. Dans les Alpes, toutes les stations de sport d'hiver en dessous de 1500 mètres ont été obligées d'arrêter tout ce qui était les remontées mécaniques du ski alpin, avec les effets sur l'emploi. Il y a donc l'hiver les problèmes de neige, et il y a l'été un nouveau problème d'une activité qui était l'alpinisme, qui faisait venir beaucoup de clients. Or, l'été, comme la nuit, ça ne gèle plus, alors toute la montagne est en train de bouger, puisqu'il y avait, les pierres tenaient en particulier par de la glace qui gelait toutes les nuits. Comme cette glace ne gèle plus, les pierres sont en train de tomber et vous avez des effondrements importants qui empêchent le développement de l'alpinisme. Devant cette situation, nous, on a interpellé les pouvoirs publics, en particulier en France, pour leur demander comment on pouvait envisager des changements, y compris dans les métiers, puisqu'il y a des métiers, dans ce qu'on appelle les métiers de la neige, les remontées mécaniques, qui vont plus exister, mais peut-être qu'il y a d'autres activités qui pourraient se développer. La réponse qui nous a été faite, c'est les canons à neige. C'est-à-dire, on va continuer de produire de la neige artificielle comme si la neige artificielle ne fondait pas alors que la neige naturelle fond. Donc, on est à des propositions à court terme. Et il va y avoir les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver en 2030 devaient se faire dans les Alpes. Le risque, c'est qu'on connaisse exactement ce qu'on a vu en Chine lorsqu'il y a eu les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver qui ont été faits en Chine, où il n'y avait que les stations et que les descentes de ski avec de la neige et tout le reste, il n'y avait pas de neige. Donc on est dans cette situation. Mais comme on est dans un secteur à fort taux d'emploi précaire, beaucoup de saisonniers, beaucoup de contrats à durée déterminée, et qui sont de moins en moins attrayants pour les jeunes, on est devant une pénurie de main-d'œuvre de plus en plus importante. Les effets, c'est que ceux qui travaillent, eh ben, ils ont de plus en plus de travail parce qu'on manque de travailleurs. Alors la réponse du patronat, elle est aujourd'hui, eh ben, allons chercher des compétences dans les pays tiers, qui est une façon de dire, on va chercher de l'immigration pour qu'ils puissent faire dans des conditions de travail dégradées ce qu'on n'arrive plus à faire. Et c'est ça la situation d'aujourd'hui. Donc on essaye, nous, en tant qu'organisation syndicale, de peser à la fois sur les aspects de mobilité transnationale et à la fois sur les problèmes de reconversion, de changement, de façon à ce que, y compris l'emploi local, puisse continuer à se développer, même s'il y a moins de neige et même si on doit faire des activités. Donc nous, le risque principal, il est au niveau de l'emploi et en particulier de l'emploi précaire.
Thank you. Chris. Sonja. And you have one. Great, fantastic.
Thank you, Marianne. Chris van Eyck from Belgian Trade Union ACV-CSC, but at this moment also spokesperson for the workers in the Luxembourg Advisory Committee on Safety and Health. And to leave this conference with some good news too, that's important. Caroli already mentioned the fact that last week the workers could find agreement with employers and governments to start a working party on climate change and OSH. Very important, a very broad mandate we have, but with a clear priority in 2024 to give an opinion to the European Commission on heated work. So that's an important first step. Also important in that mandate is that we managed to put in the text that we need to look at the gaps in the legal framework. So awareness raising is very important, but still more important is to have strict legislation. And this, I think, should be a priority for the workers in Luxembourg to have an opinion on changes in legislation, strict rules on heat, but also on other issues, negative outcomes of climate change on OSH. And I'm really looking forward to work with you all. I heard a lot of good priorities already, and to work with you and see what priorities we should tackle in this working party. Also good news for Sophie, because we start next year also the work on improving the limit value for respirable crystalline silica, because we know that the limit value we have for this substance at this moment causes too many cancers. It's really too high. So the procedure will start beginning next year. And to add something on that, my personal opinion is that occupational exposure limits are very important, should be very strict and should be respected, but it's only the last step in the hierarchy of preventive measures. More important than limit values is the first step. That's the S of STOP, that's substitution. I think the idea of substituting pesticides, for example, is more important than have strict limit values on that. So I think we should keep that in mind, that there is a hierarchy of preventive measures, because what we see now, because of the fact that a lot of limit values, rightfully so, are very low, the only way of protecting workers is to give them a mask, to give personal protective equipment. And that's not the way workers should work. It gives the responsibility of their own protection to the worker itself, and not to the employer. So I think that's something we should keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And there is a question in the back. Can you also say your name, please?
Thank you. Ben Crawford. I'm from the Grantham Climate Change Research Institute at the London School of Economics, and a couple of questions for Enrico. Firstly, you mentioned the patterns of concentration within agri-food supply chains in relation to the cost of food. I was wondering if you could say anything about the relationship between those patterns of concentration and the kind of green transition itself, and perhaps the extent to which those kind of dynamics like concentrations of biopower might affect changing agricultural practices towards sustainability and the conditions of workers in relation to that in the context of just transition. And secondly, you mentioned the role of trade unions in the governance of the transition. I just wondered whether you could add anything in terms of your thoughts on the mechanisms within the European Green Deal and the social pact for unions, and particularly within your sector, playing that governance role in a meaningful way as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we are going back to the panel now. I propose I take the same order as we had. So Sophie, any questions you want to react on?
No, maybe just because it was more comments than question, and just want to support what was said regarding the importance of the implementation of current occupational exposure limits. These kind of things are very much important, because that's true that sometimes we are working a lot on legislation, and then when it comes to the implementation, and we see that Caroli has mentioned that in some manufacturing, in some industry, sorry, that it's not implemented at all because of several steps. Sometimes it's political. It's a political trend also, just to again now this race to technology. So we would like to be a leader on some technology, so we don't care about the legislation. So I think what was mentioned by everyone today, the social conditionality is absolutely key. That's absolutely the priority for now. That any kind of money that is given to employers for this green transition should be absolutely linked to a good working condition, and that's key. Maybe a small comment, and also implementation towards SMEs is also very much important, because in the NEPSI agreement that I mentioned, we have now a project with the employers trying to disseminate it a bit, the good practices, etc. But honestly, I had the chance to attend to some panel in some country. When you invite SMEs to explain what they are doing, it's like we are in the 19th century, because they say that when they have some money to invest, they invest in the greening of their production, not in health and safety. They do not have the money. They say that they do not have the money for that this is not a priority. If they focus on health and safety, then they cannot invest on new technologies, and then they will have to close. This is what they are saying. So there is really also some stuff to do with SMEs when it comes to implementation and when it comes to this green transition. Maybe a last word on labor shortages. For us, it's absolutely clear that all of this narrative coming from the employer side is also linked to, labor shortages are linked to working conditions. That was explained, precarious work, etc. Nobody wants this kind of work. If you know that you are going to work with a very flexible contract, or in a plant in which you're gonna have some problems with your health, that you do not want to go there. So we have also to have another narrative when it comes to labor shortage. Do not say that we do not have enough workers. It's just that we do not have enough good jobs, and I think we have also lots of things to do linked to that.
Thank you, Sophie. Enrico.
Yeah, maybe to reply directly to the last couple of questions. The process of concentration is something that is happening really over the last few years and decades, I would say. And it is not only a process of concentration, it's also a process of financialization. So what we see more and more is that we have more and more private equity funds, investment funds, which are investing in food, and are investing in food and food companies in particular for several reasons, because normally you can the price is quite stable, and you can predict to a certain extent, and you can stock food, so you can play in this respect. But what is changing is that the real reason of the food sector should be to produce nutritious food to all, in particular to a growing population. And we still have major challenges in this respect, also with respect to food waste. As you know, about 1/3 of the food which is produced is actually wasted. And then on the contrary, what we see is that is becoming more and more a business. It has always been a business, but this is really becoming more and more a business, with some of these actors which are making huge profits, and at the same time, millions of people are pushed into hunger, in particular in food deficit countries, because of food speculation, and vulnerable households are having major problems in terms of food affordability. And you have it really at each and every step of the agro-food chain. Agrochemicals, think a bit Bayer, Monsanto, but also, as I said, in food production, and in many other steps of the food chain. And this process of concentration determines the fact that every time that there are just a few actors, they're basically those that set the standards, and there is not enough competition, and therefore setting the standards, they can basically play with the most vulnerable actors which are in the chain, and that means that they have a huge bargaining power with those that are further down in the chain, and this is detrimental for working people from a social perspective, and it is also detrimental for the environment. That's why we always say that this is really one of the systemic issues that we have in the agro-food sector, which should be the priority in order to tackle climate change. Because if you impose, to make it very concrete, if you impose not acceptable prices to farmers in terms of really milk production. No? We know, you know, that there are always a lot of farmers. From time to time, they come here to Brussels to protest, rightly so, on the price of milk, etc. It means that you impose on them to carry out agriculture in an intensive way, which is detrimental for the environment, is detrimental for animal welfare. And at the same time, of course, it's detrimental for working people, because if they have a limited income, imagine those that are dependent on them. So those that are further down in the chain. So this should really be the top priority, tackling these systemic issues. So process of concentration, process of financialization. In the cereal market, you know, there are just 5 big we don't only have just a limited number of countries that produce certain products like wheat or durum wheat. You know, there was this discussion on Ukraine and Russia, etc. But we also have a limited number of companies. We have Bunge, we have Cargill, we have another 2 or 3 that now I don't remember. They are quite famous. You can type them on Google. And these are our companies where we even have a European Works Council, and they are making huge money, huge profits, and then the workers we represent in those companies are struggling to get some pay increases. So they are not only creating issues everywhere across the whole food chain, pushing millions of people into hunger, but even they don't redistribute a little portion of the wealth they generate to the workers that are actually employed by them. And to your second question, how to ensure that we are really in the governance of the transition, just a couple of ideas of what could happen at European level. I think if we talk about environmental policies, it's clear that these environmental policies have some impacts on jobs. They can be positive, they can be negative, but they can have some impacts. And social partners have to be part of the process. So we have a very good system of consultation, social partners consultation according to the treaty on social policy. Well, why not extending the same also to environmental policies, to have some sort of consultation? Maybe it doesn't have to be necessarily exactly the same. Maybe social dialogue can be used, but we need to have some sort of priority in terms of consultation compared to the very broad public consultation that they do. Another thing that we support, and I know that also industry is supporting, is the creation of a new just transition observatory that really takes stock of all the initiatives sector by sector and assess how they are implemented and at the national level. And then when it comes to the food sector, something we have always supported is the creation of food policy council. We already have some of this at local level, at national level, at really metropolitan level, where there are NGOs and trade unions. Some of our affiliates are part of it. Well, why not having a European Food Policy Council where we can have all these actors together to discuss all the issues that affect the food sector, which are very, very specific. We talk about essential sectors of the economy, and we talk about sectors that have to deal with major challenges: climate change, growing population, increased geopolitical tensions, food speculation. So it's challenging what we have ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Enrico. And Adam, for you, the last round word.
Oh, then I will be speaking a lot now. Sorry, I just wanted to say, yes, I wanted to maybe underline, because what we are doing in terms of that EPSO, probably you follow us on Twitter, the issues of firefighters, I think it's very symptomatic here. And it's quite really important to actually show the importance of public services now when we deal with the the climate change. And what is quite shocking as well, when you see the recent research in terms of investing in firefightings, the member state actually cut the numbers of firefighters. So you know what I mean, how the paradox is, no? Then you know they have for the last 3 years, we have more fires, and because of the climate change is happening, and what the member states are doing, they're cutting the numbers of firefighters. Like the same in terms of the labor inspectors. I think that's an issue. There's this discussions about you could be volunteer firefighters, but this is even more dangerous because you're exposed to a lot of substances, you don't have a training. So here is an issue about, again, we need to invest in public services because they are for us to protect us from the results of the climate change. And that's what we are saying. It's another good example of water. Again, the UK, when the water is being privatized, you see the private companies making profit, but at the same time polluting the rivers and the lakes. So I think that's really important to underline that public services who are dealing with the results of the climate change, they need to be owned by us, by taxpayers, by the states. So the privatization is an issue, and again, public procurement, which is crucial here to ensure that we are not giving the money, the public money, to companies. We're not respecting just transitions. What I wanted to also ask here, exactly Karel was saying about this occupational health and safety reps, which is good because in Poland you need to have elections, so you need to elect your occupational health and safety rep. And I think that's they're playing a very important role to do so. So my final words is just, please stop climate change because it means more workload for our workers. So it's not good. Or if you are doing this, if you are polluting, then you need to spend more money, so more taxations in terms of ensuring that there is enough workers, so to address staff shortages. But I also say here that it's issues, maybe you're going too far away from occupational health and safety, but this issue of taxation is important as well, how you tax some companies. And finally, we have a COP28 happening now. And so it's maybe for us, the trade union, to be even more involved, because WHO is quite more involved, and WHO is having this sort of campaign, One Health. So health is, I mean, not One Health, because One Health is about animals and people. The campaign is about to ensuring that health is in every policies.
Right.
And I think that's quite crucial because here, as a trade unions, we are very strong in terms of having occupational health and safety. That is in our competence. That's in the treaties, so we could do something. But when we talk about health, like that air, it should be not polluted. So clean air. How you walk, how you deal with the climate change. I think that's quite important. And I think we could really capitalize on that in saying that, we need to protect workers because the majority of time that the population are spending is at work. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you to all three of you for this extremely interesting contributions of yours. I'm not even going to try to summarize, but I touched upon a few issues that all three of you mentioned. What I hear is that you have a merabwar of ideas. And many of them are, I mean, most of them, all of them are coherent. They are comparable. So you have similar ideas on how to solve it, but it's also very, I mean, very useful to solve the problems that we are facing. And what I would like to say is that what is important is to make links. I mean, because I feel already the links that we establish here. I mean, it's so clear that you have many comparable ideas, different issues, but also comparable solutions. So links between us, but also with the, let's say, with the political processes. And I'm sure you act on multiple podia, you are everywhere. But one of the things that comes to mind is also the link with the Luxembourg committee. because indeed, as Chris and Caroli mentioned, we do have this new working party. It's an achievement. It has been suggested by the workers. I mean, it has been picked up by the Commission, governments, and employers. And we are very, very well. We are quite content with the mandate of the committee. It is a broad mandate, which is also a risk, because if you go into the broadness, you don't get anywhere. But the thing is that we also managed to get in these very specific lines on, we are going to make a first opinion on extreme weather, and heat is mentioned specifically. That's one line that is very important for us. And indeed, the one that Chris mentioned also, the one on regulation, we are going to map regulation, and also to see, to assess where regulation needs to be. I mean, it's commission speak, it's political speak, but needs to be developed, improved. I mean, that's so it's targeted at a concrete result on extreme weather, more specifically heat, and it also targeted at regulation. What we are going to get is, of course, another story, but I do think that your federations need to be involved in this process, because it's so much knowledge that you bring, and it's authoritative knowledge. I think it's based on something that's completely clear to me. Now it's 11:07, so we are going now into the coffee break, and may I ask you to be back at 11:30 here. Thank you very much also for your participation. So welcome back. And we are now going to the last session of this conference, and it's going to be a presentation by our colleague from HUI, Pierre Berastegui, with the intriguing title, OSH Climate-Driven Exposure Pathways, the Broader Picture. So, as Pierre mentioned to me just in the break, much has been said already. Some things in his presentation will be familiar maybe to you, but we can see it as some sort of an analytical summary maybe of the rest of this conference. It's in certain ways it's a bit broader, and we definitely hope that it sparks the last discussion of today. So well, let me introduce Pierre. He is Pierre Berastegui. He's has a master in occupational psychology, a PhD in ergonomics, and he is researcher at the HUI since 2020. And from the start, he worked on the broad topic of the future world of work, which is, as I may stress, now. So I'm very happy to give the floor to Pierre Berastegui. Pierre.
Thank you, Marianne. So yes, many things have been said because we had very a rich conference. So it's really a positive thing. The drawback is that many of the things I will say, you already know them. So the objective of this presentation is maybe to put things into a broader perspective, to spark some discussion about the way forward based on what we heard here from many stakeholders and researchers. So I think one of the first things we need to stress is that climate change is the defining issue of our time. It's happening now, and it's happening in Europe. A few facts and figures. European land temperature increased by 2 degrees compared to pre-industrial levels. The global mean average is at 1.2. Climate-related extreme costed 560 billion euro in Europe, over the past 40 years, and 10% of this cost happened in 2021 alone. Extreme weather events accounted for 85,000 to 145,000 fatalities, and 85% of these fatalities were due to heat waves. So it's happening now, it's in Europe. It's happening now, it will keep happening no matter what we do because of the inertia in the climate system. We went too far, and no matter how quickly we can reduce carbon emissions, this inertia commits us to endure the consequences of climate change. So the future will be characterized by increasing temperature, changing precipitations patterns, and increasing occurrence and intensity of extreme weather events. We therefore need to adapt to address localized impacts of climate change. And these impacts, of course, are happening in the world of work, because workers are at the forefront of those changes. Climate change will, of course, have a significant impact on working conditions, because climate change will simply change the environmental context in which work takes place. The green transition will also see the emergence of new sectors, new risks, new tasks, new business models. We talked about the circular economy, we talked about the wind energy sectors. We talked about all those things. It has an impact on occupational health and safety. It affects job quality indicators. It calls for different prevention measures. In fact, OSH implications of climate change are already making the headlines across the world every week. So a few examples. In Singapore, construction workers fell out a rooftop, likely disoriented by heat stress. In the United States, farm workers are working at night to avoid extreme heat. It leads to new risks linked to sleep deprivation and road safety issues. In the Netherlands, 2 engineers died trapped on the roof of a wind turbine that caught fire. In Australia, in recent years, there is a re-emergence of coal dust diseases, which were thought to have been eradicated for years. In Qatar, of course, thousands of migrant workers died over the past decade due to heat, extreme heat, and poor working conditions. Also, this was mentioned by Adam just before. 10 EU countries have cut firefighter jobs despite a worsening climate crisis, causing additional workloads and worse working conditions for the remaining firefighters in those countries. In the United States, companies cleaning up after hurricane failed to protect workers from toxins. And in Spain, a worker sweeping the street of Madrid collapsed from a heat stroke and was found dead lying on the streets. So these events made it abundantly clear that workers are the canaries in the coal mine of climate change. So for those who don't know this anecdote, back in the day, coal miners used to bring canaries with them in the mine because canaries are more sensitive to dangerous gases than the human. So if the canary is dead, the miner needs to get out of the mine as fast as possible. Just like canaries, workers in specific sectors are more sensitive to climate change than the general population, simply because of increased exposure to climate change related hazards. As we have seen today during all those presentations, several studies have highlighted the effect of climate change on workers and on workplaces. And these effects are embedded in complex exposure pathways. The starting point is, of course, human-driven activities. that lead to changes in the climate system, such as air pollution, climatic variation, ozone depletion, ocean acidification, and so on. And these climate drivers interact with each other to generate climate-related hazards, such as heat waves, UV radiation, poor air quality. And the exposure to these hazards result in a variety of OSH impacts, including injuries, cancer, heat stress, eye diseases, skin problems, accidents, and of course, death. Research show that this pathway will increase the prevalence and severity of known hazards. A few examples, extreme and abnormal temperature are associated with increased risk of workplace injury. So it was also mentioned yesterday, because you have sweaty palms, because your glasses are fogged up, because you are dizzy, you are more likely to hurt yourself. Elevated temperature is also expected to increase the prevalence of heat-related illnesses. So also it was investigated and discussed in depth yesterday, such as heat stroke, heat exhaustion, heat cramps, and heat-related deaths. More frequent and intense natural disaster will cause additional mental and physical strain for emergency workers. So this was also mentioned by Adam during the roundtable, additional work. At the same time, climate change, we also see the emergence of new risks as a result of the interaction between known hazards and new conditions. This is the emergence of new vector species in Europe. We talked about mosquitoes and dengue just before. So this is due to extended habitat suitability for those vectors. With this comes new viruses and diseases jumping across humans. And also we mentioned emerging hazards caused by industrial transition. We mentioned the circular economy. We mentioned also what's happening in hotels and in emerging green industries. What we also saw today is that these risks are of very diverse nature. It's not only about heat stress. Heat stress is a lot of it, but it's not all of it. So here I try to fit what's in the literature in those 6 categories of risk we often use. So physical risks, it's about heat waves, increased risk of fires, exposure to UV radiations. Also biological risks with increased risk of epidemics, increased exposure to vectors such as mosquitoes and fleas, more airborne allergens due to warmer conditions. We also have safety risks. I don't think we mentioned this, but industrial risks are also expected to be on the rise because higher ambient temperature mean increased risk of fire by fermentation, self-heating of material, also increased risk of fire by equipment, electrical equipment overheating, pressure rises. So all those hazards will make industrial incidents more likely in industrial settings. Chemical risks with higher temperature causing more chemical intolerance, including intolerance to pesticides. So more pesticides poisoning, also higher concentration of ozone, fine particulate matter, and so on. We also have ergonomics risks with heavier workloads and also strenuous personal protective equipment that can induce further heat and discomfort. And finally, psychosocial risk. And we mentioned this many times before, particularly in sectors exposed to extreme weather events. Also in the agriculture sector with job insecurity and so on. And also post-traumatic disorder for emergency services on these things. So these risks are diverse. They may affect workers individually and in combination with each other, creating unsafe working conditions, a new challenge for occupational health and safety. The literature also shows that the OSH impacts are experienced differently within segments of the working population and also between geographic locations. First, there is a sectoral divide with specific industries at higher risk of exposure. It's of course workers working outside, employed outside. Farming and construction are on the forefront. It's also the case of green industry like solar and wind energy, and emergency services like we mentioned before. It's also the case of those working in the informal economy, seasonal workers, casual workers, the self-employed, because of a lower adaptive capacity. And this was also mentioned yesterday. Second, we have a socio-demographic divide with specific groups being more vulnerable to OSH impacts, such as pregnant women, nursing women, as it was mentioned yesterday, older adults, migrant workers, and also workers with disability. For instance, a worker with a respiratory impairment will be more affected by pollution. And we have also a geographical divide within Europe, with Southern Europe experiencing the strongest warming, and Northern and Central Europe experiencing higher prevalence of vector-borne diseases. Of course, workers at the crossing of multiple inequalities will be especially at risk with a compounding effect. So in this broader context, the main question we face today is how to give shape to the prevention of hazard. And specifically, two questions within these questions: how to safeguard health and safety from the impact of climate change, and how to make sure the green transition is not achieved at the expense of occupational health and safety. And this was a point that was made very clear also during this conference. A fundamental element is to bridge OSH and climate change policies. So it was mentioned that there are mitigation and adaptation strategy. Mitigation strategy are about reducing emissions, and adaptation strategy are about reducing the vulnerability to the impact of climate change. Both strategies are needed because of the inertia of the climate system, and any mitigation we can do will not be enough. It's important to integrate OSH in mitigation and adaptation measure, because OSH risks can occur from these strategies themselves. We talked about rescheduling, working at night to avoid heat. This raises other risks linked to reduced visibility, higher accident rates, fatigue, and also psychosocial risks. We talked also about the green industries and the race that is happening within those industries that can lead to unsafe working conditions. So this was mentioned as well. So in this context, it's important to take OSH into consideration when designing those policies. That's the main, that's the first aspect, include OSH in climate change. Conversely, it's equally important to include climate change issue in OSH as a component of OSH policy and practice. And this includes new guidance on workplace risk assessment, improved preventive and control measures, and the adaptation of standards. But this raised one key issue, the issue of preparedness. Employers are not used to deal with climate change related hazards. Maybe they are not concerned enough as well to protect their employees from the health impact of climate change. So programs that and policies and regulation that address those barriers will be critical in the way forward. To be prepared, business should, like it was mentioned by Alain Piet, these things must be prepared in advance. It's not when there is a heat wave that you have to call around and say, what should I do about it with my workers? No, these things need to be prepared. And to be prepared, business should devote more resource to hazard identification. Also to perform vulnerability assessments to determine which worker is at risk and when it is at risk, how he is at risk, and why he is at risk. And finally, implement procedures, equipment, policies that eliminate or minimize the impact of these hazards. It was also mentioned, I think, during the roundtable that OSH professionals will be on the forefront of these changes. They will hold a key role in the preparation of businesses. For many organizations, especially those involved in outdoor activities or operating in locations that are more vulnerable to climate change impacts, for those organizations, the changes will require significant revisions in work organization, operating models, systems, equipment, and practices. And in this context, OSH professionals will be tasked with different objectives. First, assessing those evolving risks and identify the vulnerable workers. Informing the employers, the employees, the general public about those risks and how they call for new prevention measures at a macro level or organizational level. Implementing adequate prevention measures and recommendation for at-risk workers. Also training workers on climate-related exposure, best practice, and concrete tools to mitigate the risks. And finally, monitoring. Monitoring key OSH indicators to support continual improvement of the OSH management system. So really nothing new for those familiar with OSH. And it's important to say this element of nothing new. It's important to counter any misperception that the role of OSH professional is only to deal about work-generated hazard. It's not. It's not only work-generated hazard. It's also external factors and the environment. External factors and the environment are other additional area of hazard that fall within the realm of occupational health and safety, as it is defined in ISO 45001 on OSH management systems. This is important to recall this to ensure that OSH professionals are fully utilized within the range of their competency. But at the same time, we must recognize that OSH professionals need a broader range of skills and knowledge in the field of climate change and OSH. OSH professionals will be increasingly called on to help public policymakers and organizations to tackle complex work-related problems. They will help to ensure that climate change policies, mitigation, adaptation policies, take into account the anticipation, the evaluation, and the control of occupational hazards. They will ensure that we pay attention to vulnerable groups of workers and gender-sensitive issues. In sum, sound OSH knowledge will be pivotal element in achieving socially and environmentally responsible businesses. But there is a big but to this. The current state of climate change related OSH knowledge is calling for further research. First thing, the literature really has substantially grown over the past decades, so that's something we need to acknowledge, but there are still many gaps in the literature. And one of these gaps is one of those bias is that most of the literature is focused on the OSH impacts of increased temperature, such as heat stress, for example. A recent review showed that 86% of OSH studies investigate the consequences of heat. And it makes sense because 85% of the fatalities of climate change are linked to heat waves. So it is indeed a very important topic to investigate, but it is not the only topic to investigate. There is a lack of research on the other effects of climate change, particularly regarding mental and physical health effects on worker exposure to air pollution, vector-borne diseases, and extreme weather events. Similarly, a great share of the literature is focused on outdoor activities. 45% of OSH studies are actually either on construction or on agriculture sectors. And again, it makes sense. Those sectors are indeed particularly exposed to the OSH impact of climate change. But they are not the only ones to be exposed to those impacts. There is a lack of research on the impact of climate change on indoor activities, notably on the OSH impacts of poor air conditioning, indoor exposure, flood damage, and molds that can also damage infrastructure and impact occupational health on the longer term. Also on particulate matter, those fine particles that can go through AC and impact occupational health and safety. And finally, there is also a need for more theoretical studies capable of providing a comprehensive overview on the issue and guiding further research. And particularly what is currently lacking is a review on specific sectors or on specific impacts other than the usual suspects. Those reviews are lacking, which also is a consequence that the primary research is lacking in the first place, of course. So a few 4 points of conclusion. Of course, we could make, I think, 15 slides of conclusion because this conference was quite rich, in my opinion. I think one important element is that exposure pathways are manifold. It's not only about increased temperature, it's also about air pollution, extreme weather events, infectious agents, UV radiations. It's really manifold. The impact is unequal, and this was made very clear, I think, today and yesterday. We are not all equal in the face of climate change-related hazards. OSH impacts are unevenly distributed across countries, economic sectors, and socio-demographic groups. There is a need to bridge OSH and climate change policies in order to achieve a socially and environmentally responsible transition to the new world of work. And businesses need to be prepared, implying a broader range of knowledge for OSH professionals and further research on neglected impacts and sectors. Thank you. That's all for me. Yes.
Thank you very much, Pierre. It's always a pleasure listening to your presentations and looking at the slides. The thing is that you have this capability of structuring and in a very analytical way, very complicated topics. And I think it's amazing because you prepared this beforehand, but indeed, how many times have you mentioned the fact that this has been said? Yeah, so it's interesting that from different angles, you know, from practice, from details from the topic, from practices in the sectors, and from the research angle, we come to really the same picture. So thanks a lot for that. And now I want to open the floor for like 15 minutes of questions, if any are there. So please feel welcome. Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm a journalist on energy and geostrategy. And I would like to know if there is a possibility or a need, or would it be good to do it? Do some mapping about the geographical positions that must be avoided for the moment until all research has been done and all bridging has been done. I mean, not go there where there is a bad equation, a bad configuration. Not invest. This is for economy.
Okay,
Or not, or just awareness. It's just a question, it's not an opinion.
thank you. I see Bella also. Yeah, please, yeah. Bella, you have the floor. Yeah.
Thank you, but if there's anybody else, yeah. Thanks, Pierre, it was really interesting. And the only thing I would ask, now you also mentioned that we have this low carbon industrial race, so intense competition in low carbon technologies as part of the green transition. And in this fierce competition, there is a hunt for new investments. And there are also state subsidies for getting investments in battery factories, in chips, and this and that. Europe doesn't have labor conditionalities in these investments to promote these investments. And health and safety also doesn't play a role here. So the minimum standards, for example, as a Chinese battery factory should apply at a European location are not set. And there are, so how about that?
Thank you. Any other questions? Carol.
Thank you very much. Just to respond to and continue what Bela put the question, the social or labor conditionalities. Have you had already certain plans to go ahead with research or assessment of the situation in the different EU member states? And I would also call not only EU member states for now, but also those who are in the pipeline of the accession processes. Extremely important, Western Balkan, Armenia, Georgia, Moldova. They are really in need of data and also good arguments in their hands for the things. This is one point. Second, the Hungarian case, and I think Bela didn't mention, but referred also to that, where heavy public money subsidies are provided for incoming investments without any conditionality. And that's why I mentioned previously the role of enforcement. The already existing regulations to be enforced, plus linked to public procurements and also any kind of such funding. And the third I'd like to mention, which might give also a good chance to link up Europe and the potential investor countries from the labor side. The ILO governing body has just adopted a month ago the Global Strategy on Occupational Safety and Health 2024-30, a 7-year program, which will provide also political, technical assistance, and also funding for promoting awareness raising, advocacy, and support the ILO constituents. And that's also for the social partners, for trade unions as well. So we should look at it, and ETUI, ETUC, together with the ILO Brussels office, to look into it, what can be linked up here with the ITUC as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much. These are all questions that go way beyond ergonomics.
Yes.
But thank you for that, because it makes clear that everything is related to everything, as I mentioned also in the last session. So yeah, I don't know. I want to give the floor to you first, Pierre, but then I would also like to say something and maybe ask some questions back also.
Thank you for the very interesting questions, some of them that are indeed maybe beyond the scope of the work I presented here. Regarding mapping area that should be avoided, but I think it's always good to recall that the fundamental element is the obligation of the employers to protect the worker, assess the risks, and if it's not possible to protect the workers because of the work taking place in a particularly dangerous area, then this area, of course, should be avoided. In the context of work, it should always fall to this obligation of protecting the workers. If it's not possible to protect the worker in some context, it means that the work should not take place in that context for this. The issue of increasing racing competition and the rapid shift to a green industry has been mentioned yesterday also in this conference, leading to a precarious working condition and sometimes also sustainability measure in companies adding an additional workload for the workers and further a degrading working condition, as it was mentioned in the hotel sectors. Of course, those innovations, those initiatives should never be implemented at the cost of occupational health and safety, and that's quite what's happening in some sectors, as it was showed today. And the notion of labor conditionality was also mentioned, and is clearly a way forwards to ensure a decent working conditions in those transitions. That's something.
Thank you, Pierre. Yes, yeah, I mean, I think both Bella and Karoli referred to social conditionality and the importance of it. It was also mentioned this morning in the contributions of the Trade Union Federation. So that is, of course, a key issue. Another question of Karoli was related to research in the EU member states and to what extent EQI has planned this already. I think that's a really important point. It's actually, I took note of it in one of my conclusions, but I'm going to pre-conclude now. But anyway, yeah, it's so because research, it's clear that more research is needed in many ways, and it's clear that it's high time to make this research agenda. We have been lagging behind, I think, in this point. We have only started working on the OSH elements of climate change quite recently, to be honest. I think it has been since 2020. I mean, so you know, the awareness and we are currently in the phase, as you may have noticed, to get the narrative together, and this is always an element that I find very important. Our unit finds it very important to get a clear picture of what the problem is. I think this conference has contributed to that hugely, but also the colleagues in the unit have been working on it. Oce Valiello has worked on it. I have worked on it. We have made some first steps, but it's not enough. I do think that this conference has made a great contribution to this narrative, but also to prompt further work and further research. So research in the member states. Thank you, Karoli, for this idea, because we will take it on board, and also in the new or the candidate states. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to promise that we are going to do it. Huh? It's an idea to take on board. We have to respect also our own resources, human resources especially. But you know, it's the narrative first. then it's a research agenda, a political agenda. I mean, it's those elements that we have to pursue. The ILO, it's money related. Thank you also for that. I mean, so you, it's good to know. And yeah, so yeah, that's from my side. So if there are no more questions, I want to thank Pierre and the audience, and I will try to draw some conclusions, and which is quite challenging always, but especially this time, because we had a very rich conference. So yeah, this conference was about OSH and climate change and green transition, OSH and climate change, OSH and green transition, and also about possible solutions. And I think we touched upon all three of them. And climate change is out there. It's not going away. So, and it's affecting workers. That's a quite obvious conclusion. I mean, it's not very difficult to think about the consequences of heat, the consequences of extreme weather events, et cetera, and also the indirect effects like air pollution, reduced chemical tolerance, and the new impacts of biological agents as well. So it's very clear that climate change has consequences, creates risks for workers. I want to highlight one, I want to pick out one element, and that is heat, because heat indeed, it's clear from many research that heat leads to the most climate-related deaths. Of course, this needs to be researched further. I mean, because maybe other risks are not researched enough. So, but for now, heat is by far the number one death cause from climate change among workers. So, and then the green transitions, we have seen the effects of green transitions in very different sectors. It's the wind energy sector, the biofuel sector, the waste management sector, the hotel sector. So very different sectors, and different effects also, of course, in these sectors. Biofuel sector, dangerous substances, chemicals, wind energy sector, ergonomic risks of accidents, but also others. Waste management also includes biological agents risks. And the hotel sector, many ergonomic risks and psychosocial risks, workload, everything. So very different sectors, very different effects that are known within the OSH community. It's not new risks. It's just that they are being exacerbated or by the green transition, by the new organization of work and creation of new sectors. But one element that I find strikingly, I mean, one element that is common in all presentations is that we run behind the facts. It's the work changes. We have new sectors. We have a new way of working in certain sectors, like the hotel sector. We create new industries. We change industries. But what we seem to forget is that if we do this, if we are going to organize the work differently, we have to take into account that this has consequences for the health and safety of workers. So it's very basic OSH, actually. It's if you change the work, make a risk assessment. It's so basic. And therefore, it is so strange that this doesn't happen. So clearly, there's a need of more awareness about this. There is a need of more awareness about this. It's really strange because this is basic OSH. It's one of the fundamental principles in the OSH framework directive. Make a risk assessment when the work changes. It's as simple as that. But yeah, so And then as examples of solutions, we have also had examples of solutions on different levels. We have of course had the example of the Belgian regulation on hot and cold temperatures. It's a good example of it's a good body of regulation. It shows that it is possible to regulate. We have had trade union proposals, and Pierre also mentioned the role of professionals. And going a bit further into detail about the proposals made by the trade unions, I've already mentioned them. It's, I mean, and it's clear that we need more knowledge, we need more research, and quite a bit of research. I mean, there's quite a lot of work to be done. We need more data. We need to strengthen the argument. So that is one element. I heard also there's a need for new regulation. Absolutely, just new regulation, and I heard this several times. The new regulation is needed on extreme weather events, specifically on heat. It was a clear demand from EFAT, from Enrico, from the agriculture and food sector. We need this regulation both on European and on national level. It's something that the Workers' Interest Group in the Advisory Committee in Luxembourg also agrees on. This is something we really need. It's also very clear that, let's say, heat specialists, temperature specialists also make a plea for this regulation on European level, also to make to come to upward convergence, because there are member states that have actually quite good regulation, as the Belgian regulation. It's really good, and the good thing is that it's not that difficult to regulate. You take an indicator. I mean, it's of course it goes a bit beyond maximum temperature. It's this WBGT indicator that needs to be taken as there need to be a maximum numbers need to be established, and beyond that maximum, an action plan needs to be put in place. And this action plan is actually, I mean, it's intuitively that we know breaks, hydration, shade, agency of workers to take breaks when they need it. So there's a whole list of fairly simple measures that can be put in a law. And then it is also clear that the trade unions and the workers have a really important role in all this. I don't think much action will be taken if it doesn't come from the trade union side. But I was really impressed by the federation's input on this topic. So I think we really need to join forces here and work on it. Before the final remark, also the role of professionals mentioned, OSH professionals mentioned by Pierre. And this is coming back again to this very simple fact that change of work, risk assessment. And to do a good risk assessment, you need good professionals, of course, also in collaboration with the workers. So yeah, as a conclusion, so yeah, I often make this remark. I realize that at the end of a conference, but to join forces is really important. And I think also to join forces between different disciplines and between different discourses, between different fields of action. So we need more knowledge, yes. I mean, in as far as we are capable of doing it, given our resources, we will be a driving force in that. I mean, it's the EQI. But we need this more knowledge, but we also need the exchange between the knowledge area, let's say, the academic area, the semi-academic area, and the political arena. It's very, very important to communicate, because I've seen it in many instances, and I think many of you maybe have the same experience. We are going to develop a lot of knowledge in academia or wherever, in think tanks, or but we forget to bring it into practice. And the practice, to bring it into practice, is really, really urgent. So we cannot wait 10 years to get this knowledge together. We need to go in parallel, research and politics, research and practice. So yeah, I think I leave it to that. And then I have a few practical remarks, and I need because so yes, I want to ask you to take the headphones with you and put them outside. It's and if you want, you can also leave your badge in a box outside the room. It's also a very good measure. PowerPoints will be put on the ETU website together with the video of the conference. So you can always look back to certain parts of the conference. And then the only thing to be done is to thank everybody. A big thank you to the speakers. I think they were excellent. I also want to thank you as an audience. I think we have had an active audience, committed and participating audience. So thank you very much for that and taking the effort to come to Brussels. I also want to thank my team, the part of the team that is present, Sonia and Pierre, but also the part that is not present, especially Oce Valielli, who basically organized, well, who completely organized the content of this conference. And I want to thank Dominique Swan for her careful, caring support. It's without this conference like this is not possible. And last but not least, of course, the interpreters who worked remotely today, so they are not here in booths, but they are at home. So thank you very much to the interpreters as well, without whom a conference like this is not possible. Thank you very much and have a good trip home. Well, within the time, good. Yes. Yeah. Oh, and there's lunch. Huh? Don't forget to eat. It's really important. Yeah. We don't want to waste food.